Good morning. Checking my audio.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Hey, good morning, everyone. It's currently 9 o'clock. We'll get started in just a couple minutes to give an opportunity for others to join. Thank you. Hey, good morning and welcome. And thank you for joining us today for the State Water Resources Control Board's Drinking Water and Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program fee stakeholder meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom and webcast platforms and also is being recorded. My name is David Ceccarelli, and I am the Feed and Revenue Branch Chief within the Division of Administrative Services. Today, we have many of the Fee and Revenue Branch staff working behind the scenes to ensure that this meeting runs as smoothly as possible. If any time throughout this event you find that you're having technical difficulties, please email das-drinkingwaterfees@waterboards.ca.gov. From the Water Board's Feed and Revenue Branch, and assisting me today in this presentation is Cassandra White and Tracy Lutz. Individuals attending via Zoom, please use the raise the hand function if you'd like to ask a question or provide a comment. If you're joining us through the webcast, you can also submit a comment or question by emailing us. And again, the email is on the screen. In the past, there have been a few delays in the broadcast through the webcast. Therefore, through the meeting, staff may pause so the broadcast can catch up to the listeners. Again, we thank you for joining us virtually today. We thank you for your patience as we've moved into this 100% virtual meeting space. We are doing our best to ensure that everyone can participate in an effective way. So let's just go over just a few meeting guidelines. One, remember to use the handouts that were sent via email. If you do not have the handouts, don't worry. We will be sharing the documents on the screen. And then you can also request a copy of documents after the meeting, or the handouts are posted on the Water Board's fee webpage. Two, please introduce yourself and who you represent when it's your time to speak. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. And remember, if you can always submit comments and questions through the event by sending them, again, to the email das-drinkingwaterfees@waterboards.ca.gov. And we will have staff monitoring those emails, and we'll take them in order received. For the meeting to run smoothly and efficiently and stay on track, we are requesting each participant who wants to ask a question to please ask one question at a time. I understand you may have a clarifying question to your original question, and that's acceptable. Once your question is fully answered, we're going to move on to the next participant's question, and you'll be put back into the order of participants who are requesting to ask a question. In addition, we respect all opinions and input. However, if the discussion starts to move away from the intent of the meeting, which is to discuss drinking water and ELAP fees, then I'm going to ask that the participant and I meet offline to coordinate these discussions further and involve the appropriate staff as needed. So at this point, let's go ahead and review the agenda. And we will be switching items 2 and 3. So we will be starting with item 3, which is the safe drinking water account budget cost drivers. And then we'll move back to item 2, which is the safe drinking water account fund condition. And then we'll move into potential drinking water fee changes. And then from there, we'll move into the ELAP portion of the meeting. And we'll, same thing there. We'll be going over the cost drivers first, which is item 6, and then we'll go back to item 5, which is the fund condition. And then we'll be discussing proposed ELAP fee changes. And then we'll move into an open discussion. And then at that point, we'll talk about next steps, which is driving us to our September 18th board meeting. So before we get started, I do want to highlight the budget this year, and specifically what's known as there's a budget letter 2410 that was sent from the Department of Finance to all state departments. And this finance letter, again, budget letter 2410, is posted on Department of Finance's website. And basically, the 2024 Budget Act puts the state on a long-term, fiscally responsible path and promotes government efficiencies through approved ongoing budgetary reductions in fiscal year 24-25 and beyond. To achieve the savings included in the budget, the Department of Finance will work with agencies and departments over the coming months on these required budget reductions. So to achieve this balanced budget, the budget assumes 2 separate budgetary reductions. So one, there is a statewide vacant position funding reduction of $1.5 billion in fiscal year 24-25. And in fiscal year 25-26, Finance will reduce another $1.5 billion and eliminate approximately 10,000 positions statewide via control section 4.12. So when I mention this reduction, this is statewide for all state agencies, including the water boards. On top of this, there is a 7.95% ongoing reduction to department state operation budgets in fiscal year 24-25 via control section 4.05. So Finance will issue additional budget letters further detailing the processes and timing of these reductions. In the past, the guidance and adjusting is provided in the late fall after the board has adopted fee schedules. Staff are setting fees off of the budgetary expenditures in the Budget Act. So the budgetary expenditures that are in the current Budget Act is what staff is setting our fees off of. At this point in the process, we don't know the total impact of these reductions since we have not received guidance from the Department of Finance. Staff does anticipate these reductions will reduce budgetary expenditures in our fee funds, and these adjustments will impact next year's fee setting cycle. So in general, when our budgetary expenditures are lower, it results in less revenue we need to collect. So again, we'll be working closely with Department of Finance in the upcoming months, and getting this guidance and making those proper adjustments. And then moving into our next fee setting process for next fiscal year, we'll be discussing these impacts of these reductions to our fees. So at this point, we are going to start with, again, item number 3 on the agenda, which is the Safe Drinking Water Account Budget Cost Drivers. and I'm going to toss this to Tracy. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning. Can I see the next slide, please? Thank you. Good morning. The first table shows last fiscal year 23-24 fee setting budget at $42.9 million, followed by the governor's enacted fee setting budget for 24-25 at $47.9 million, which is a net difference of $5 million or 11.8%. The second table shows what is driving the program costs. The first cost driver is state operations with an increase of just over $1.7 million or 4%. This is primarily employee compensation, including salaries, healthcare, and retirement. The next item are the BCPs. There are 5 BCPs, which Cassandra will explain in more detail after we run through the totals. The first is the enforcement support for permanent and sustainable drinking water solutions. This BCP is $250,000, which is 0.6%. The second BCP is the Information Security and Privacy Staffing BCP. This BCP is charged to all the water board's funds, and the SDWA portion is $46,000, which is 0.1%. The third BCP is Senate Bill SB 3, Water Shutoff Protection Act. This BCP is $1.6 million, which is 3.8%. The next BCP is the Los Angeles County Primacy Delegation Agreement termination. This BCP is $881,000, which is 2.1%. The last of the BCPs is Assembly Bill AB 664, Enforcement Support for At-Risk Domestic Well Compliance. This BCP is $450,000, which is 1%. Finally, the last cost driver is pro rata, which shows an increase of $99,000, which is 0.2%. This concludes the cost driver detail supporting the overall SDWA increase of $5 million or 11.8%. Before we take any questions, I will pass it back to Cassandra, who will provide more details on the BCPs.
Thank you, Tracy, and good morning, everyone. So going back to the first BCP, the Enforcement Support for Permanent and Sustainable Drinking Water Solutions. This will support the Division of Drinking Water's efforts to implement solutions for communities lacking safe drinking water and enforce the Safe Drinking Water Act. The position would be a dedicated attorney within the Office of Enforcement to support the Division of Drinking Water's enforcement efforts. The funding of $250,000 will be ongoing for one permanent position. The second BCP is Information Security and Privacy Office staffing. This is to enhance the Information Security Office staffing capabilities and establish a new privacy office. The new positions will provide staffing needs in the areas of privacy, technical security, and informational security compliance. And as Tracy mentioned, this BCP is for all of the department's funds. The total is $629,000, supporting 4 PYs, and safe drinking water portion is $46,000. The next BCP is the Water Shutoff Protection expansion, and this is a result of SB 3. The funding will support 5 staff members and contract resources associated with requirements of SB 3, extending water shutoff provisions to water systems between 15 and 200 connections. The funding of $1.6 million will support 5 PYs and $250,000 in one-time contract costs to develop a database, and $250,000 ongoing contract costs to develop a required water system training. So for fiscal year 25-26, $1.3 million of ongoing funding will be provided to support the 5 PYs and the ongoing training contract costs. The next BCP is enforcement support for at-risk domestic well compliance. It's a result of AB 664. And this will support the Division of Drinking Water's efforts to address enforcement needs related to the implementation of SB 664 requirements on at-risk domestic well owners providing drinking water to property tenants. The requirements imposed on these owners will necessitate a robust enforcement program to ensure compliance. The funding of $450,000 will be for 3 permanent positions. And then the final BCP is the Los Angeles County Primacy Delegation Agreement termination. To carry out the public small water system regulatory program for Los Angeles County, the county's primacy delegation was scheduled to be terminated no later than June 30, 2024, per the request of the county. And oversight of the delegated public water systems is in the process of being transferred to the State Water Board. The funding of $881,000 would be ongoing for 4 permanent positions. And I will hand it back to David at this time.
Thank you, Cassandra. Let's go ahead and take a question. Good morning, Bob. Give your hand up.
Good morning. Yes, I do. Let me lower it again, though. There we go. I understand the Water Shutoff Protection Act and the LA County measure, the technicalities of them, but why are they being transferred to state funding when they apparently might be local issues? I'm not channeling IID. It's a different kind of question. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I represent the cities, of Antioch, Woodland, Fresno, Long Beach, South Coast Water District, Santa Cruz, and a bunch of other folks.
Hey, thank you, Bob. And to respond to your question at this point, I'm going to table it just for a moment. The reason is we do have one of the deputy directors from Division of Drinking Water joining us here in a few minutes, and so I can bring the question back to Andrew when he gets back online here, and then we'll have him discuss it.
Cool, thank you.
No problem. So let's go back to item number 2, which is the fund condition. And I wanted to just start with the third column over, which is the fiscal year 23-24 forecast, and looking at the beginning balance in the fund of $2.6 million. And this is a carryover, of course, from the ending balance of 22-23. We're anticipating that our total revenues in 23-24 are $42.8 million, and our expenditures are at $42.6 million, which basically puts us pretty much even in the fund for comparing expenditures and revenues, about $221,000, with an ending balance of 2.8 with a 6.6% reserve. This is still a forecast because our accounting office has not closed the books, and we're still waiting on a few adjustments to take place. We're hoping to have these books closed within this month, and then these numbers will be final. And then the next column over, we put this as an example. If we don't do any increases, what's going to happen to the fund? Well, we recognize that the fund's cost drivers are going up over $5 million, so expenditures are definitely going up. But as you can see, that if we maintained our revenue at $42.6 million, and our expenditures are going up close to $48 million, this puts us into a negative structure, excuse me, with comparing expenditures with revenues, and definitely puts the ending balance in the red at $2.5 million. And so as we move over to the last column there, which is with our proposals in place, we would be looking at, of course, our beginning balance of $2.8 million, revenues of $48 million, and then our expenditures at nearly $48 million, which basically balances the fund and an ending balance of 2.8 million and a 6% reserve, drawing it down slightly. And so looking at our fee increases, or excuse me, our fee adjustments that we're looking at doing this fiscal year, it would balance the fund. And so, Cassandra, correct me on this number if I'm wrong here. Was it 12.2%?
12.7.
12.7. Yes. So, what our proposal is again, we know that cost drivers are going up nearly 5 million in this fund. So in order to collect an additional $5 million in revenue, we would be looking at spreading a 12.7% increase to all drinking water fee payers. And so as we've done before, we look at each category and we adjust each of those categories by 12.7%. And then that will help generate the revenue needed to cover all these expenditures that are that was approved in the governor's budget. So I'm not seeing any questions at this time. Let's go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda. And I'm going to toss this to Cassandra.
Thank you. And before I review this item, I just wanted to point out that today we're using an updated version of this attachment 3, the group quarters fee proposal, and the revised handout with this new revised update will be available either by the end of today or on Monday. So the proposal will change the methodology for calculating group quarters by moving from a service connection / population calculation to solely using population to calculate the fee, and further refining population by adding residential to the regulation. So here you see the proposed fee structure. It's a tier-based fee structure, very similar to the community water systems fee structure. The first tier contains a flat or per person fee, whichever is greater. And then the remaining tiers are based on a per person fee based on residential population served. And I also wanted to remind that now that residential population is used to calculate the group quarters fees, program will be communicating to the identified group quarter water systems reminders to verify the population data reported is correctly broken down by the various types, which is residential, transient, and non-transient. And at this time, I will check and see with Gabriella from Division of Drinking Water. Do you have anything else to add?
No further comments on my end, Cassandra. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Are there any questions on this new proposed fee structure? Okay, then I will hand it back to David.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to pause just for a sec, see if there are any email questions.
None at this time.
None at this time. Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and we are going to move into the ELAP portion of the meeting. And we will start with the budgetary cost drivers. Let me before we go ahead and start, I do see a hand up. Hey, good morning, Tim. You have your hand up?
Yeah, good morning. Actually, my question goes back to the BCP page, the second attachment. I was wondering if Division of Drinking Water has provided any analysis of why so many, seems like the LA County reversion of primacy to the state is one of a long number of counties that have done that. Is that an expectation going forward that more counties will do that? And do we know why that is happening?
I don't want to answer for the division right now. I do have some of the division staff on, but they represent more or less the ELAP program. And again, Andrew is going to be joining us here shortly, and so again, like Bob's question, if we could just table it for a few minutes, and then I'll have Andrew hopefully respond to it. If not, we'll definitely get you a response to your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And then I'm sorry, Tim. Tim, who do you represent again?
I'm representing the California, Nevada section of the American Water Works Association.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could, David, could I
Yes.
add one other? I don't expect that you have this at your fingertips, but I'm curious about sort of the breakdown of I think you said 5 positions and some training expenses and so forth for the SB3 Water Shut Up Protection Act. If possible, if we could see and what all is included in that 3.8 or 1.6 million, that would be great.
And I believe that information is in the BCP itself. All of these BCPs, well, they're linked on the agenda, so definitely you could click on it, and there's a lot of detail in there about the positions. And so I know I'll start with that. Just kind of if you haven't looked at the BCP, I would encourage you to look at that. That may answer your question there.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So let's go ahead and we'll again move into the ELAP portion, and we'll start with the budgetary cost drivers, and toss it to Tracy here.
Thank you. Good morning once again. Okay, the first table shows last year's fee setting budget at 4.65 million, followed by the governor's enacted fee setting budget for 24-25 at 4.67 million, which is a net difference of 20,000 or 0.4%. The second table shows what's driving the program costs, and there were no changes to this in the enacted budget. The first cost driver is state operations with an increase of 73,000 or 1.6%. And the last cost driver is pro rata, which decreased 53,000 or 1.1%. That is the cost driver detail supporting the overall ELIF impact of 20,000 or 0.4%, and concludes our look at the budget cost drivers for ELIF. I will hand it back to David for questions and the fund condition.
Thank you, Tracy. So let's go ahead and move to the fund condition here. And definitely, I'm going to start with the fiscal year 22-23 here, just to kind of give a little history, because what has happened, of course, is that we've built somewhat of a large reserve in this fund. And that was somewhat expected, projected based on some measures that the Division of Drinking Water took. And looking at total revenues, we collected roughly around 4 million. But expenditures were more around 3 million, 2.9 million. And as the conversations have gone before, the division decided to take some of the employees and hold them vacant, and then other positions were being charged to other funds and not to ELIF, which again reduces the expenditures in the program. And then, but at the same time, generated more revenue than expenditures, which basically drove the fund to basically a 26.8% fund reserve. So we do recognize that. Looking at 23, 24, where we lined up, we have an adjusted beginning balance of 1.4 million. We have total revenue of 4 million. Our expenditures are approximately 4.4 million, with a kind of a net structural deficit between expenditures and revenue of roughly $400,000, with an ending balance of a little over $1 million, or 1.1 million, which again is 24.6 million. And so, moving forward, we're looking at figuring out, of course, a structure to cover our cost as we move forward. And I think we're getting close to that. But we also recognize that we have, a large reserve. I highlight, if we didn't do any fee changes, where would we land? And that's the fourth column over there, referred to as new fee changes. Basically, with a deficit of close to 700,000, and a balance of 418,000, which is basically a 9% reserve in this fund. Again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with a fee structure that's going to generate revenue, matching our budgetary expenditures, balancing each other out. But we do understand that we have a fund reserve here. So looking at 24-25, having a beginning balance of 1.1 million, total revenues based on the proposal that we're going to talk about here in a moment, which would generate roughly about 4.7 million, total expenditures being roughly around 4.7 million, balances the fund, and leaves an ending balance again is about 1.1 million, which is again about 23.4% reserve. And we recognize this. We do have a proposal that the majority of fee payers are not going to see increases this year. However, on the larger labs, we're proposing to add some additional tiers. This is basically designed on, the greater FOAs that you have, or the more FOAs that you have, the higher the fee, because we're building in additional tiers at the end, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But as a result of that new structure, we think that our revenues are going to meet our program expenditures. And then, at some point after we adopt this, now we have to figure out kind of the ending balance. Now, I know that Darren has mentioned that there's a need for a new database in ELAP, and that as a result of this new database, that some of this funding can be used to build in or help build that new database. And so more discussions about that, but also as we move forward in the process, and as I mentioned earlier, that there's these potential budget cuts, which is going to reduce expenditures. And I don't exactly know the impacts of that, but we're going to have to figure that out. So as we move into next fiscal year, there's an opportunity definitely for us to see what the reserve is, and to help utilize the reserve to potentially minimize fees. What I'm trying not to do is to get the fund kind of out of whack on the structure itself. And what I mean by that is kind of looking at 22-23, where our revenues are exceeding expenditures. And in the past, it was the other way around, where expenditures were a lot higher than the actual revenue coming in. So again, my goal is just try to balance it. It's as a result of us holding these positions and creating a cost savings, we've built the reserve up. So as we again move into the next cycle, we'll have an opportunity to really have discussions about the reserve and how we kind of utilize it. So let's move into the next item here. which is again our proposed ELAP fee changes based on FOA tier adjustments. And we presented this last time, basically at last year's during the May board meeting. ELAP discussed with the board about moving to a more progressive fee structure. The intent was to introduce higher fees to those who are doing more of the work in California, and we think that this moves towards that. At the board's direction, ELAP and the fee revenue branch staff put together a work group to explore the possibilities of introducing a fee component based on volume. And after holding several work group meetings for various reasons, this was determined not to be a viable option. So we then looked at how can we incorporate something into existing FOA tiers, and based on the work group meetings, develop this proposal of introducing larger tiers into the FOA fee structure. The proposed FOA structure would increase fees to those labs with the highest number of FOAs, while keeping all the other fee categories constant next fiscal year. So, in looking at this based on the current structure, we had multiple labs that were over 500 FOAs. I believe we had one lab that's definitely over 2,000, but under the current structure, everyone is paying at that cap of 300 plus. And so we think this kind of levels the playing field. Definitely, again, puts us into a structure where the work is being done. And does bring in more revenue to help, of course, balance our revenues with our expenditures, but at the same time, does not impact the smaller labs with the fee increases in this fiscal year. Are there any questions or comments at this point?
We do have an online question.
Yes, please, let's take that.
Okay, from Lisa Stafford representing Eurofins Environment Testing. The question is, are the additional FOA fee categories a shift from last year's proposal to make fees based on the number of samples analyzed by a laboratory to accommodate the board's request that larger laboratories pay proportionally larger fees?
The answer is yes, and then Kate or Christina, if you want to chime in on that also. Good morning, Kate.
Hey, everyone. Christine, I can take that if you're okay. So just to reiterate David's answer, yes. We explored the volume-based option for a while, but when we proposed it, there was kind of a resounding no from the whole community, small and big labs alike, because there's not infrastructure in place to really track regulatory samples in laboratories right now. ELAP also doesn't have infrastructure to track that. So the lift to get to there was just considered to be huge and very costly. And so we, pumped the brakes on that and threw that proposal out and then developed this in place of that, which is meant to approximate the same result. It will be less accurate, right? Because we're not counting volume, but we think it gets very close to doing that, to estimating that, with also like a much easier implementation for the labs and for ELAP as well.
Thank you, Kate. I'm pausing here to see if there are any other questions coming in.
I see Andrew, David.
Yes. And I will introduce Andrew here in a moment. Okay, so I don't see anything related to ELAP on the proposal. What we're going to do is, if we can move back to the agenda would list the BCPs. And good morning, Andrew. There are a couple of questions that came in, and I told them that I would just table it and pass them on to you if you could help with the response to this. And I'm gonna introduce Bob Gore here and let Bob go ahead and ask his question again. Let me pass it on to Bob here. Good morning, Bob.
Hey, good morning again. Hiya, Andrew. Couple of quick explanations. The Water Shutoff Protection Act funding, I understand what it does. The question becomes is why is it a 3.8% out of 11.8% cost driver? And then secondly, to gang these together. Okay, so LA County is reverting primacy. I didn't realize that was voluntary. Like, here's all expenses, thanks. And are there other counties among the 57 lined up to do this? Complex, but I appreciate your patience, Andrew. Thanks.
Sure. So let's see. So first of all, on the water shutoff, and this was related to a legislative BCP for SB3, which extended the water shutoff, I guess, requirements to all water systems. So before it was, I think there was the urban water systems, and I think it went down a little further in terms of a little smaller than that. This SB3 extended it to all water systems, and so the resources that we received for that are kind of a twofold. One is to do well, we need a database. We don't actually have a good way to track that right now, and so there are requirements, and we aren't able to track them very well. So we're going to use some of the first year money to build a database to do that, and then we also receive 5 staff, so there'll be 2 staff in the Office of Enforcement, and I can't remember offhand. I believe one's an attorney and one's an analyst, and so of course they'll help with the enforcement aspects of it. And then 3 staff in the Division of Drinking Water to help to do the response to people who contact us about water shutoffs. We actually get quite a few a week that we need to respond to do the tracking, but then actually also to do training for water systems on what the requirements are, how to stay current, to be able to answer questions and do that sort of thing. So that's hopefully that answers your questions around the water shutoff.
Unfortunately, it does. Well, I'll talk to Darren and Phil about this. I've got some concerns about continually defaulting to fee payers, but that's another conversation. Thanks.
Okay. And then as far as the LPAs, yeah, I mean the LPAs, LA in this case, that was a voluntary return, and those are to us of those systems, and those are local decisions that are made at the county level. And as far as is this a, I don't know, trend, or I think that's how I took your question.
Yeah.
We've been seeing a number of LPAs coming back over the past several years. And, I don't know if it's a trend or not, to be honest. I mean, it has been happening, but they're not related in terms of the reasons why they come back. It's just, again, local decision making of how they want to kind of use their resources and that sort of thing, and their sort of responsibility over the water systems. And and although it does change our fees, it's kind of a zero-sum game for the water systems because they go from paying fees to the county to paying fees to us.
So you're saying this is a zero-sum cost driver? We get the fund gets reimbursed by the systems or
Well,
no?
you're getting more systems
Right.
into the fold, I guess, right? And so those systems had been paying directly to the county to support the county staff, and now they're not paying to the county anymore, and so they'll be paying to us. I hope I'm getting that right, David.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then Tim, I know you had a question and regarding one of the BCPs.
Yeah, I had a similar question to what the one you just answered from Bob about the number of LPAs that are counties that are getting out of that and returning their primacy back to the state. But I guess you've kind of responded to that. My other question, actually a question I didn't ask before you came on, had to do with the BCP for enforcement support for permanent and sustainable drinking water solutions. But I've just opened the BCP itself, and so maybe that will answer my question. So I guess I'll just forgo delving into those any further because I hadn't had a chance to read what's in those BCPs. So I'll
Okay.
do that.
And by all means, feel free to reach out later and we can chat or correspond about that.
I guess one question, and it kind of goes back to Bob's question, or maybe more of a comment that he made. Like with SB3, I was curious, when it comes out of the appropriations committees, there must be some estimate of the cost, the budget, the general fund. Is there any general fund monies going to that new law, or is it all fee-based funded?
I'll let David answer that.
From my understanding, it's all fee-based. I don't know if there's any general fund going towards it, Tim.
I don't believe there is.
Yeah. I think at this point, it's all fee funded.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. I guess that's all I have for now. Thanks, David and Andrew.
Hey, thank you, Tim. Thank you,
Thank
Andrew.
David, we
I
do
did
have
notice there.
an email question.
Yes, go ahead, Stephanie or Tracy.
And I think this one's probably best for Kate. We have Scott Furness representing California Laboratory Services asking how many labs have dropped their ELAP accreditation.
Yeah, I can take that. I mean, that's I'm assuming that question is directed at like how many have recently dropped their accreditation since the new regulations went into effect. I can tell you that we've had since early 2023, January 2023, we've had a net change of 35 laboratories. So 39 have relinquished. We've had 5 new ones in that period of time. So 34 laboratories. We are seeing what we believe to be a kind of a slowing of the relinquishing of accreditations, because the last major milestone in our new regs was January 1st, 2024, and that was when the T&I standard requirements became effective. And so what we're seeing, I think, is a slowing of labs dropping their accreditation and a stabilization of the laboratory population. Currently, we're sitting just over 500 labs in our state. So we're still watching that very closely because our fees are zero. It is a zero-sum game for our fees. They're fully covered by the laboratories. So any change in population affects how much everyone else has to pay. So we're keeping a close eye on that. But yeah, actually fewer laboratories have relinquished accreditation than we had internally anticipated related to the effective date of the TNI standard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I will pause here one more time just to see if any additional questions come in. I don't see any additional questions coming in online. I don't see any within the meeting. I will just open up for a moment to see if anyone has any comments or any further questions related to the topics today or anything else you'd like to discuss. Okay, so we'll talk about next steps. So this is our third Drinking Water and ELAP fee stakeholder meeting as part of the fee cycle process here at the water boards. We are driving to presenting an item for consideration adoption at the September 18th board meeting. And for those that are familiar with the process, the item itself should be posted 10 days prior to the 18th, so roughly around September 8th, which puts us into a comment period, which gives an opportunity for the stakeholders to comment on staff's proposals. And at that point, of course, we'll review the comments and, of course, be discussing the proposals with our board members. If at any time after this meeting, you have any questions related to anything that was discussed today, please, reach out to myself or Cassandra and or Tracy, and we'll be happy to coordinate those responses. And if we need to get program staff involved, we'll definitely reach out to program and have program involved with those discussions. So I'm just checking one more time. I again don't see any questions. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank all the stakeholders taking their time out and participating in this meeting. We appreciate everyone's input and comments in this process. I want to thank program staff, Andrew, and his staff at the Division of Drinking Water. Appreciate your time and effort in the fee setting process. And then I want to thank my staff and the staff behind the scenes on working on navigating the screens and then putting the agenda and everything together. And as Cassandra mentioned, there will be an updated handout being posted with some slight updates to the group quarter section. So again, appreciate all your time today. Have a great rest of your day and have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.